In 1988, the internet was a fledgling network of curious scientists and engineers. Long before the World Wide Web, computers across universities and research labs were linked by phone lines, and trust was the currency of the network. Passwords were scarce and systems often left open to each other. Everyone wanted to collaborate and get along. On November 2, 1988 at 8:30 p.m., a graduate student at Cornell University released a program that would change everything. Let's see what happens. Robert Tappan Morris was a talented young hacker. A Harvard graduate and son of an NSA mathematician, Morris had grown up immersed in computers. He was a prankster at heart, fascinated by networks and security. He devised a self-replicating program, a worm, intended to gauge the size of the early internet. Send. Unbeknownst to Robert, a tiny flaw lurked in his code. Within seconds, his worm began spreading across the network, and it would not stop. The Morris worm was built to exploit several vulnerabilities in Unix systems. It had multiple attack routes. It could open the Unix sendmail program in debug mode, sending commands that created a shell on the target machine. This gave the worm a foothold. It exploited a bug in the fingered program that allowed it to overflow a buffer and execute malicious code on the target. It leveraged network trust setups. Many machines allowed remote logins without passwords. The worm would guess simple accounts and passwords to hop through networks. These vectors took advantage of a carefree internet where machines trusted each other. Once connected, each instance of the worm would copy itself to the new host. Robert deliberately built a check into the worm. It would ask each machine, "Are you already infected?" If the answer was no, it would infect. If yes, it should stop. In practice, this was its only attempt to regulate itself. But a coding mistake proved disastrous. The worm's logic was too trusting. After 7 yes answers, meaning it thought it was already on the host, it repeated anyway. This small flaw made the worm multiply exponentially. Infected machines ended up running multiple copies simultaneously, slowing them to a crawl or crashing them outright. Within hours of release, the worm had a life of its own. By the next morning, around 6,000 of the roughly 60,000 computers on the early internet had been infected. Services slowed to a halt. People across the network woke up to pandemonium. "We are currently under attack." Renowned institutions, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, NASA, the Lawrence Livermore Lab, and many more, suddenly became victims. This was 1988, a year before the World Wide Web existed. The worm only targeted one type of machine, BSD Unix, but it spread relentlessly because of its multiple entry points. "Networks are down everywhere, emails backed up for days." Vital operations slowed to a crawl. Military labs couldn't run simulations. Universities delayed research. Email queued up for days. Hundreds of sites disconnected their computers for safety, wiping systems and rebuilding from backups. The damage, eventually estimated in the millions, was incalculable. As administrators scrambled to eliminate the worm, word of the outbreak reached wider audiences. By November 4th, headlines blared about the computer worm that paralyzed the internet. Underneath the chaos, Robert Morris panicked. He contacted friends, confessing the worm was spiraling out of control. One friend sent an apology message into the network on Robert's behalf, but most systems were too crippled to receive it. He said it was meant as a harmless experiment, a mistake in the code. Another friend anonymously tipped off the New York Times. In phone interviews, he revealed he knew the author, hinting by initials, RTM. The Times dug deeper. Within days, authorities confirmed the source: 23-year-old Cornell grad student Robert T. Morris. The worm had a silver lining. The internet community recognized the need for coordinated defense. In early 1988, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, established the first Computer Emergency Response Team, known as CERT, to share information about vulnerabilities and incidents. Researchers like Eugene Spafford and others published analyses of the worm's code. They noted it contained no malicious payload, no data was stolen or destroyed, only a proof of concept gone awry. But the collateral damage was real. G. Spafford dramatized. His code had no kill switch, it just replicated. The operators never intended this extent of harm. The FBI tracked down Morris and, in 1989, charged him under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, or CFAA. It was the first criminal case of its kind in the United States. In 1990, Morris was tried and convicted. The court handed down probation for 3 years, 400 hours of community service, and a fine of over $10,000. His conviction was appealed but ultimately upheld, setting a precedent for cyber law. Judge, voiceover. The defendant's actions were illegal under the CFAA. He is hereby sentenced. To many, Morris's case became a cautionary tale. Was he a malicious hacker or a misguided white hat? His intent was never to destroy, but the law found the outcome could not be ignored. In the years that followed, the Morris worm achieved a kind of legend. It taught hard lessons about network security and responsible disclosure. Companies and institutions began taking security seriously. Password management programs, system logs, firewalls, these became standard defenses in the early 90s. The once trusting, open network culture gave way to caution and protection. The Morris worm also inspired a generation of security researchers and ethical hackers. It showed how quickly software can propagate, a concept that is now foundational in cybersecurity curricula. Experts credit it with raising awareness. It made the world uncomfortable with online security, as one analyst put it. Professor, voiceover. After this, we knew the internet couldn't be left unguarded. We learned vulnerability disclosure couldn't wait. Decades later, we reflect on Morris's experiment and its unintended fallout. His worm wrote no destruction commands, yet its replication caused chaos. It stands as an early lesson. Even harmless code can wreak havoc if it runs wild. Robert Morris went on to a successful career in tech, but the worm he launched is a permanent chapter in history. For cybersecurity students and professionals, it remains a symbol of ethical responsibility. Code should always be tested with caution, and systems built with security in mind. The Morris worm was not meant to destroy, but it did teach us to defend.